everyone has brew pubs and everyone has restaurants and everyone has museums and culture. Again, it's different. The local flavor is different, but it's hard to say we're the only. But when you appeal to values, that changes the context. So instead of appealing on just a direct, my content is better than yours, so to speak, you can say, if you're this sort of person and these kinds of things are important to you, then what we have, you will be able to make your own.
And welcome everybody to another episode. This is episode 3 of Over a Pint Marketing. Episode 3, guys. They never thought we'd make it past 2. We freaking showed them, didn't we? Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. Today, we'll be talking travel with Jennifer Simmons. I am Pat McGovern, Director of New Business Development over at Visitation in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the beautiful 5th Ward, although we've been working remotely for a while here. Today, I'm knocking back an Outboard from Milwaukee Brewing Company. That's going to be my pint of choice today. And joining me is Brian.
Morning, all. My name is Brian Meehan. I'm the president of Celtic. We are a marketing communications agency located in downtown Milwaukee in the 3rd Ward. We've got a lot of diverse client experience. One of our key categories is the travel tourism industry. Been in it for 28 years, and that's why I'm so excited to have Jennifer with us today for our conversation. I just think it's going to be very insightful and a lot of fun. I am drinking one of my favorite names, Punk Ass Cat from Door County Brewing Company. So I'll show you the can here, but Punk Ass Cat, I'm knocking back an IPA. Kurt, I'll pass it off to you, sir.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kurt Lingle. I'm the vice president at Celtic, and very excited as well for the topic today. I'm excited that we got to episode number 3, and I'm excited to be talking with Jennifer as well. I think it's a fascinating category that's seen a lot of changes, so I'm very interested to dive into this conversation. And keeping in theme with Over a Pint, I am drinking a pumpkin lager from Lakefront Brewery, which is a fantastic brewery not too far from us. Good people, good beer, and we actually had a chance to work with them a number of years ago on a product launch. So cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Cheers. Well, yeah, this is going to be a special episode. Jennifer Simmons and I have known each other. Jennifer, it's over 10 years, right?
Yeah, don't say it. It's, Pat, you're just going to age us.
Is it knocking on? Is it knocking? Yeah. Wow. I had the pleasure of working with Jennifer. She is an amazing woman. She is so brilliant. Literally, guys, she makes everybody else smarter. And she has just, it's just been unbelievable working with her. She is a woman of many talents. One of her specialties is the travel space. So I'm pumped as hell to just be digging into this, because this has been a sector. So many sectors have been hit hard. Travel and hospitality have got to be, they've got to be the hardest. In fact, I saw, getting ready for this episode, guys, I was just, doing some research, a number from the U.S. Travel Association. Travel's been hit and probably will lose, get this number, $519 billion. I mean, that's insane. You can't even comprehend that, right? And that's probably going to go up. So we're going to be digging into all of that. But before we do, let's introduce the person of the hour, Jennifer Simmons. Jennifer, how you doing? Thanks for being on the show.
Okay, you guys have all had 2 of your pints. Pat, you've been drinking way too much for that kind of intro.
Yeah. It gets better.
It's still early where I live, so that's tea, actually, and not a Long Island. Ooh, we got a pint. Yeah, I have worked in travel for a long time. My specialty is actually brand strategy, and just getting ready for talking to you 3 gents. I did sort of review my list of clients that I've worked with. So just to name a few of them in the travel space, I've worked with a couple of countries, the Dominican Republic and Belize. I've worked with several state tourism offices, Wisconsin, West Virginia, Maine, Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, and Nevada. More CBBs than I can list, but a few of them are St. Pete, Clearwater in Florida, Reno, Nevada, Orlando, Columbus, Ohio, Aspen, and probably the biggest kahuna that everybody knows about is Las Vegas. I've worked in the sort of the tertiary space around what we classically call travel and tourism, which is recreation. So a lot of like boat brands and outdoor brands. Several attractions. Back in the day, the very first attraction I worked on was a crossover from an ag brand, the John Deere Pavilion in Moline, Illinois. Their CEO created that as a tourist attraction. A couple of airports, and some industry associations, namely some like Rocky Mountain International. They're the international marketing arm for a couple of the Rocky Mountain states, including Wyoming.
Just amazing. Holy cow, Jennifer. And I think it's fair to say, I know there are a few people who've worked on it as well, but you were one of the main people who really kind of developed the value-based positioning for travel organizations. Is that a fair assumption? Is that a fair statement to make, Jennifer?
Yeah, I think so, Pat. You know, I didn't certainly invent value-based marketing or value-based positioning. In fact, there were a lot of academics. We marketing practitioners tend not to think about academics very often because they write a lot of really interesting, you know, research papers that are kind of a little bit gorpy to read. But, you know, they had been working on that for a long time and really making a definitive connection between people's values and their travel behaviors. And they were the first ones to actually prove that there's a relationship between people being able to see themselves in your destination because of the values your brands hold and actual visitation and spending of money. So, you know, I'm a student of the craft, and so that was fascinating to me. I have a market research background, so reading all that gorpy crap didn't bother me. And basically what I did was figure out a way to make that practical. How do you take that out of the classroom and the realm of the universities and put it into practice in large and small destinations? How do you track that? How do you position on that? What would that mean in terms of the different way that you would promote? So sort of in a nutshell, destinations for the long time promoted, here's all the stuff we have to see and do, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the list of things to see and do looks fairly similar. I mean, we like to think that the things that are to see and do in Colorado are different than Maine, are different than Nebraska. And obviously there's a flavor, size, and scale difference.
Yeah.
But I hate to say it, since we're on a pint kick here, everyone has brew pubs and everyone has restaurants and everyone has museums and culture. Again, it's different. The local flavor is different, but it's hard to say we're the only. But when you appeal to values, that changes the context. So instead of appealing on just a direct, my content is better than yours, so to speak, you can say, if you're this sort of person and these kinds of things are important to you, then what we have, you will be able to make your own. And so it really allowed people to see themselves in a brand for the first time and really change the way the destination spoke about their experiences.
Yeah, and that's, you touched on it, Jennifer, and I just want to put a kind of a finer point on that. This was a 10x change, because you're right. Up until this, it was a matter of, we've got something for everyone, more or less. How do we switch that line up, right? But that's what tourism marketing was all about. We'll just show our thing, and this really was a game changer. And you know, we can't give out numbers and everything, but the work that you did significantly drove business to those destinations that you're talking about. So it's not just, hey, this is a good academic practice. This was hardcore, real life, practical stuff that worked. So, and really kind of changed the game on that.
Yeah, yes, I do have a lot of case studies. It did change the game. And in the cases of the the states and the CVBs that really implemented, didn't just sort of philosophically embrace it, but full on executed against a positioning based, a strategy based in values. Their visitation went up, their economic impact went up, their length of stay went up, their net promoter scores went up, and on all the different metrics that we tend to measure tourism, there's really good data behind it that it's effective.
So, Jennifer, so just segueing now into kind of the meat of our conversation. You're working in the space, we've all seen the numbers, but give us your view of what's going on in travel right now. I mean, kind of give us that 30,000-foot view. Obviously it's hurting, right? So we know that, but are you seeing any changes maybe since April or May till now? Are you seeing, how are things shifting around? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the big elephant in the room, of course, is COVID-19. We all know that. I think overall, you started with the stat from USTA. If you look at their projections, and not just USTA's, but STAR reports on the hotel side, if you look at Moody's Analytics, it doesn't really matter which large organization you look at. Their projections are pretty clear. One, they believe travel will recover because it always has, and because there are so many subsectors in it, right? Attractions, hotels, restaurants, recreation, airlines, gasoline is part of it if you count the,
Sure.
Travel. So there's so many different sort of subsectors that are all at slightly different places in their response and their recovery to COVID. Having said that, almost all of them are saying 3 years. 3 years before travel goes back to its previous high, which was 2019. Okay. So that's starting in 2021, 3 years. All right. Just to get back. So now, are all those subsectors going to work at the same rate? No, of course not. We're actually already seeing some reimagining and reinvention of how travel is promoted and what's important. Drive travel was up significantly this year. Air travel was down. That makes perfect sense. Airbnbs went, as travel goes, they were one of the big winners. Over chain hotels, because there's a sense of more personal attention and privacy and not so many volume of people going through the same rooms, greater cleanliness, sort of greater sense of some destinations that previously were perhaps overlooked because they sort of had less than, now less than is more, right? Isolation is kind of becoming a luxury. Right? Before you had sort of badge value about going to the most popular place. Now this exclusivity and going to places that are off the beaten path, less traveled, then, they're winning. So some of my clients, like Nebraska, I have to say, when I started working with Nebraska, they were dead last on the list of states that people wanted to visit. They're not dead last anymore. They've moved up 5 or 6 places. Now, are they anywhere near the top? No. But this summer, even with COVID, some of their smaller, I'm not talking the Lincolns and the Omahas, although those are coming along, but some of the smaller off the beaten path places where people could invent their own fun, do their own thing, and have it in their sense of control, they did well.
Interesting. Boy,
hey, Jennifer.
They're still lagging. Don't get me wrong. They're still lagging.
Jennifer, if I could just stay on these subsegments again, because you're right. When you talk about travel tourism, CVBs, resorts, airlines, attractions, outdoor, it's all those things. And I know they're diverse and they all have different marketing needs, but if those folks are on this call right now, I mean, what are some things that can give them some optimism? We know it might be a 3-year recovery, but are there some 2 or 3 things that people should really be queuing in right now across the whole travel space to give some sense of optimism?
Yes, there are. And it has to do with sort of reimagining, slightly re-engineering the experiences in light of what consumers are now desiring because of COVID. COVID's not the only reason. There's economic fallout from that. You know, we're the day after the election. There's some political uncertainty right now. Frankly, uncertainty is probably the number one thing underneath all of the trends that are driving people's desires and behaviors a little bit differently. So I mentioned one of them. Isolation is sort of the new luxury. Mindful minimalism is another trend. What that means is we've all sort of figured out how to live with less, right? Less social interaction, less time in restaurants, right? COVID has, whether we wanted to learn it or not, it has taught us how to do that. And so it has brought forth a prioritization of what is really important, spending time with family, educating kids if you have kids in your family. So enriching your soul, sort of growth and learning. Hobbies are making a comeback. Hobbies that, you know, we haven't seen growth in, like, you know, sewing and woodworking and gardening and how long. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but simplicity is a really big trend now. So making experiences enriching and welcoming and interesting, but simple. Where does your food come from, right? So things like agritourism, we're talking about beer here. So how does a brew pub make its beer? Where do the hops come from, right? Sensory things have a lot more value now. We're all sitting here on a Microsoft Teams or Zoom call, right?
Yep.
We're missing all the energy that you usually get when you're sitting with somebody. So sensory things, sight, smells, sounds, landscapes, these are all inherent in travel and always have been, but now they have a heightened orientation for people because some of it has been dampened out just by virtue of technology.
Yeah. Wow.
Well,
those are some great tips, you know, I mean, for anybody that's in the category, that translates into all the various subsegments.
Yes. And then, you know, one that isn't COVID related, but clearly our country is struggling with and is going to for a while, you know, diversity and inclusion. I do have to say, it's not my opinion. There's been several reports. PricewaterhouseCoopers has done sort of the definitive study on it. If you look across industries, which industries are doing a better job of inclusiveness and diversity, tourism is not one of them. We've talked a good talk, but we haven't walked it. And so not only do we have to put that in our marketing and show that in terms of our imagery and our copy and our messaging, the industry itself, we need to do a better job of harnessing our own differences of culture and background and Asian experience and worldview. So that is something that will not come easily, but it will, in my opinion, be a game-changing winner for all kinds of different subsectors in the tourism space. The more we do that, the better off we're going to be individually and collectively.
You know, Jennifer, just sorry to follow up on that. It's funny you say isolation, minimalism, simplicity. You know, one of our clients is the Ice Age Trail, which is a national historic trail, and they're going through the roof participation. So you're talking about large national trends, just bringing it down to a local Wisconsin level. I mean, they're seeing numbers like they've never seen before because people want to have space. They want to de-stress. They want to reconnect. They want things simple. We're even seeing it with like tours where it's like smaller groups, more personalized. To your point, let's talk to the, you know, the chef and how they're preparing the meal and where it's coming from. So we're definitely seeing that with on a local level with some of our clients.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
In Jennifer, you know, as you were talking about the situation, right? It's the industry has been really hit hard, but within this, there's definitely opportunities. You just mentioned Nebraska. Okay, they're moving up the ladder. They're not going to probably surpass Vegas, but they're making a move, right?
Mm.
But so is this some of the things that you're kind of providing consultation on and advice on? And is it, one, guys, you got to get out there and market, and two, if you're going to be out there and market, you've got to be hitting those kind of themes that you just discussed, the isolation, the minimalism, the simplicity. Are those kind of things that you're encouraging right now, or where's that conversation at?
That's really interesting, Pat. If you look across destination marketing, and this is slowly changing, but starting with the initial quarantine period, right? There was sort of I'm going to keep promoting. This is the best time to promote because people are going to have pent up demand. They're going to be tired of sitting at home, and I'm going to keep right in front of them and spend my money. And then there were destinations that were like, well, I'm not going to spend my money right now. I'm going to save that and or repurpose that for internal training, right? And so I think it's a balance of both. And it's up to the destination to sort of determine politically and timing wise. I'll use another example. You have to consider the politics of travel because, let's face it, there's a lot of committees, and at the state level, it's usually general appropriations fund or some bed tax that's funding it. So
sure,
there's a political overlay. So for example, the state of Maine, they were not alone, but their governor basically said, please don't come here. We'd love to have you come usually, but because of the health and safety of our residents, please don't. Okay. Would that have been smart for the tourism organization to then be promoting? Of course not. That's sending a mixed message. So that is a consideration, sort of how, whether we have a national mandate, which we don't. It came down to the state level, and mostly it went down to municipalities. You have to sort of look at your offering in that light. Right. Now, to answer your question, are these trends things I'm educating my clients about? Absolutely. To Brian's point, how do you apply that at a local level? And how do you apply it if you're an event versus an attraction, right? Events are probably among the hardest hit because they rely on lots of people, right? In Milwaukee, Summerfest, that's what makes that event interesting. Now, some people are getting pretty creative. They're doing drive-in versions, right? Of concerts. So reimagining and re-engineering to be safe. From a messaging perspective, some of the bigger brands, airlines, for example, Southwest is a great example. They're being super transparent about their experience, particularly their cleaning experience. Now, would you have ever imagined as a marketer that you'd want to talk about cleaning protocols? No, like I always used to joke, when you're a hotel, you don't talk about the fact that you have clean sheets. I assume you do. Now you need to talk about it.
Jennifer, just talk, because you and I had shared this story before, but I think this is really telling to the extent that Southwest is going through what that means and what that looks like. So explain to the listeners, like when you're talking about being transparent, how detailed they're getting on this.
Yeah. So, and I'm not saying other airlines aren't doing this. I'm just going to use the personal experience of Southwest. I'm a frequent flyer on Southwest, so I get a lot of communication from them. And the last several emails were, I mean, insanely specific. The name of the cleaning solution that they were using, what percentage of that was alcohol, the number of times that they clean airplanes, how much time they've now spaced between flights to turn the plane around. If you know anything about Southwest, they were super fast at the turn. They've expanded that to allow for more cleaning, what filtration system they're using, how often, how frequently the air is exchanged, outside air from inside air. They're not alone. So really specific things in their emails to their customers, how long they were going to keep the middle seat open and when they were going to change that, reinforcing that they require masks, you know, that they're not going to have shared you can't touch things the way you used to, and you can't get up the way you used to do that, how often they clean the restrooms. I mean, seriously, these are things, but they're reassuring.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On top of that, IATA, the Airline Industry Association. Now, look, we all know they have a bias for their research. They want to promote that travel and air is safe. But Embraer, Boeing, and Airbus all got together. They did their studies separately, so their methodology was a little bit different. And IATA is basically shown with the data they have that air travel with all of those protocols in place is safer than people think it is.
Yeah. Interesting.
They spent a lot of money and time on that. They need to, because fear and uncertainty is what people are making their own risk decisions against.
Jennifer, let's hang on that for a moment and let's compare that. And have you seen, so you got Southwest as your example, and I'm sure there's other airlines that are doing that as well. All of us here at Over Pint love all the airlines. If anybody wants to sponsor the show, just please contact us. But so you've got Southwest and other airlines going through this meticulous kind of just in depth of just, here's all the things that we're doing. Are you seeing that from the hotel space? And if you are, to what degree? Is it to the same degree, or are they missing an opportunity here? Because, let me stop there.
I hate to generalize because there's so many different brands in the hotel space.
For sure.
And, I certainly don't have contact with each and every one of them. I think to some extent they're being a little bit more general. They are sending out reassuring messages, especially to their frequent travelers. If you look on their websites, there's definitely information that's there. There are places that you can find that information. I personally haven't experienced quite the specificity, the personalization, and the frequency of being willing to continue to go back to that topic and say, we know it's still a concern of yours, and here's what we're continuing to do. On the flip side, I mentioned Airbnb is one of the winners, if there are winners during COVID. Now they clearly have a different business model, and they do have some things going for them that chains don't, which is that it feels more personal. Right. The owners of the properties, they have done a very good job of specificity with their cleaning protocol messages. The review piece of it, other people staying there. If again, back before COVID, you'd see reviews of places and you'd get, Mari was a great host and it's right in walkability and all this, the coffee maker was great, and subtle mentions of, and it was clean and nice.
Sure.
Now this is what's leading, right? It's clean. It was. They have hand sanitizer there, and then those other things. And so I think the priority of what you put first also matters. So if it feels like if it's an afterthought, messaging wise, even if it's not, that signals something unintended.
Hey, Jennifer, it's funny you bring that up. We've all become experts in cleaning protocols and marketing that for our clients, because it doesn't matter. Again, CVB Resort, airline, attraction, everybody's focused on it. And I have to tell you, I stayed in a hotel a couple months ago and I found it fascinating. They sealed the door with the Purell sticker. So when you went to go in, it was a touchless experience and there was a seal. So right away, cleanliness was top of mind. Then when you went in, it was like the remote control has been disinfected using UVC light and the countertops have been wiped down with this. It was impressive. And again, maybe they're not all doing it, but I'm telling you, if you're a tour, if you're an attraction, if you're an airline, if you're a hotel, that has to be at the top of the list right now. You have to be reassuring. And what a flip that is, because usually it was marketing features and benefits, right? Like the free cocktail downstairs and the coffee maker and all that fun stuff.
And a lot of hotels that had, free breakfast or coffee, that's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I want to go back to a topic that you touched on, and that is, I think you used it with Maine but I also saw that here with Door County. So for those who are listening, for the millions of listeners we have, Door County is a great vacation area here in Wisconsin. It's a really unique part of the state. And this must have been April, maybe early May, very early into the shutdown. And there were articles specifically in the Chicago Tribune where they were saying, hey, listen, if you want to come to Door County, don't. Mm-hmm. We don't want you here, right? Mm. Because the fear was it's a small place. COVID, breaks out in a big way. We're going to be inundated, right? The hospitals can't keep up, right? So that was a big, legit fear. Yeah. So stay out. Well, come summertime, it was, hey, where are you guys? We need to have you. And I think I haven't seen numbers, but I bet they had a very, very strong year because it's a close drive market. They did an amazing job with a lot of their advertising, particularly on Instagram, of showing a lot of shots with water and open spaces. And but I'm just wondering now that numbers are soaring again in so many places, that this idea of stay away, come back, stay away, come back, it's going to cause some conflict. And how do organizations kind of just find their way through that?
Yeah, that's a $1 million question there, Pat. I think as marketers, we historically, we're open throttle. Full bore, go at it, peak season, get it done. One of the other trends is off-season visitation, right? Because of COVID, because I don't want to be amongst all the crowds. Now I'm willing to go places at a time when previously I wouldn't have gone, because I expect there to be less people. In some ways, this does enable destinations to have visitors visit a little bit more like a local. You'll have a little bit more genuine, true, non-tourist, but visitor experience.
Wow, let's hang on that for a minute, because I totally would agree with you on that. I can see there's definitely opportunity there, but now that kind of really changes up the game, right? I mean, before you're waiting, everybody's got their peak season, they got their shoulder season, and they got their off season, right? And kind of the media dollar spend would go accordingly.
Right.
This may really put a monkey wrench into things, going, wow, right? If we can increase that off season a little bit, man, we don't have to hit summer as hard. Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah.
And so to the extent that this is easier said than done. It's definitely easier for individual attractions or restaurants or museums to do, as opposed to at the CVB or state level. But to the extent that you have some funds that you can pilot, see what happens. Pilot, if it works, scale up a little bit, see how that goes. Like, there's a little bit more test and experiment that needs to be done, rather than sort of formulaic, well, this is what always worked in the past. We're new game.
Yeah.
We have to be a little bit more, nobody wants to hear this, but we have to be a little bit more willing to fail on some short-term campaigns to piece together a bigger picture that works. And some of that money, like we've been talking about external marketing promotion money. But let's not forget that some of that money is probably well spent training frontline staff. How do you communicate, right? What are the things, because there's that individual touch, even from 6 feet apart. I'm going to come into the hotel and I'm going to say, what is there to do here? The answer can't be nothing this time of year.
Right.
Right? It can't be that. If they ask, where are places that aren't that busy but that are interesting to go to, like, that's a shift in mentality. And so frontline staff matters, infrastructure, the protocols, are you actually implementing that? Some money has to go into that. There's education, there's collaboration that perhaps needs a bigger focus than in the past. And I would say that amongst the industry, if nothing else Zoom has done, right, for big destinations, there's always geography, states, right?
Right.
There's 8 regions in the states, and they're especially urban versus rural. They're different. Well, now you're talking to your colleagues across the state, and you don't have this geographic silo anymore because we're all doing Hollywood Squares. Well, what are you doing? What can I learn that was effective for you? How could I, take that and see what your best practice is, and how can I make it my own, and then share that back, so that together we can learn what works and what doesn't.
Jennifer,
if I could, I got a quick question for you. One of the things as marketers that we're always trying to do is we're trying to challenge our clients to identify what really differentiates them from others. And we talked about that earlier in the travel industry. It's like we want to be everything to everyone. And you kind of hit on self-reflection earlier on in the conversation. With COVID, as individuals, we've had to self-reflect. And, I'm wondering from a brand perspective, there probably has been a lot of self-reflection as well that's taken place. You talk about, isolation and some of the things that maybe weren't as marketable a year ago now are. And when you were going through your experience, some of the brands you've worked on, one that I was made aware of before we had a chance to meet you was Nebraska. And it was interesting because I went to the website. I've been to Nebraska. And I like Nebraska. I've driven through a couple times. But I started to get a feel of the brand and the messaging. And the thing that hit me right away was, like it or not, this was very authentic, believable, and true to their DNA. This was not a message that you would take and put it on top of Idaho or Wyoming or Maine. This was Nebraska.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of cool. And so my question is, I guess getting back, there are some positives that do come out of negatives all the time. And has this, in your experience, is this forcing brands as well to really self-reflect just as we have individuals have, and really try to work harder to find, hey, let's really work hard and find what differentiates us, and let's say that's okay. Let's embrace it. Let's, pour water and feed this. I'm just kind of curious what your perspective might be on something like that.
Kurt, I sure hope so. That would be my greatest hope for the tourism industry, is that professionally, from a brand standpoint, we not only are looking at this in terms of how to keep our visitors safe, but what is it about our experience? And I go back to our first conversation about values. What is it in that very personal belief, opinion, life stage? Is education important to you? Is enriching important to you? Like, we really do need to use this time to take stock and say, we may have always done these things, and which of those should we keep doing? Which of those should we stop doing? And the third piece then is, what are the new things we haven't done or tried before that we need to add? And it's the combination of the three of them. It can't just be, we're going to keep doing and. No, nobody has the time or the resources or the budget to do that and. What are we going to scale back and let go of? Right? That's always we all know that from business, right? Marketing needs to have a sacrifice, but we don't like to do it. We talk about it, we don't really like to do it.
Right.
This is a great time to say, what should we let go of? By the way, if people already have perceptions in their head, some of those are going to stick no matter what we do as marketers. So which of those do we really need to reinforce, and which are going to work for us no matter what? Then let them go. I mean, how much do I have to tell you about Las Vegas, really? Now I need to tell you some new things about Las Vegas that you've never thought before, right? In order for it to stay on your list. That's a hard push. Now, Nebraska, other end of the spectrum. You've been there, but a lot of people basically think, and I'm not saying anything proprietary, there's nothing to do there. Well, before that was a really hard push. I had to list a bunch of things and try to convince you that, but now that there's a desire for less, that simplicity, that honesty, that self-made experience is more enticing.
Mm-hmm.
So now your preconceptions of that place actually, because the context has changed, has more appeal. Now I can play into that instead of trying to push the rock up a hill, so to speak.
Yeah.
Let's hang on the Nebraska thing just for a moment, because for those who are listening who aren't familiar with the Nebraska theme and so forth, Jennifer, you were very instrumental in helping to pull that together. It is. I want you to just talk about that and what steps you needed to take in order to get them to think like that. I mean, that's. Once you hear this, everybody who's listening, again, once you hear this is like a big departure in something that a lot of states don't want to admit, right? So, Jennifer, take the mic.
Okay, so here, I'll actually show you if you haven't seen it. I don't know if you can see that. That's their logo. It says Nebraska. Honestly, it's not for everyone.
Yeah, fantastic.
When that was created, a lot of work went into that. Probably nobody knows what the theme was before that because because nobody knows.
Right.
It was Nebraska nice.
Okay.
Now, guess what? Nebraskans are insanely warm, nice people. That is true. It's accurate. That was built on a lot of research as well, and I'm not faulting the prior agency or administration. It was absolutely representative of the DNA of the state. However, is that compelling? That's nice. No, it's not that compelling. Of course you want to go somewhere where the people are nice and the place is nice. Well, we did a ton of research. We did quantitative research. We did a ton of focus groups, lots of SWOT analyses, looking at all of the different regions and the different experiences in the state. The ranking that I mentioned that they're dead last. Why are they down there? Right. And, listen, there was brand apathy. There was complete lack of familiarity. And if you've been to Nebraska, most people have gone across I-80 to get from one end to the other. That's a massively long car ride. And if you don't get off of I-80, you don't really experience Nebraska.
Right.
Most people want to get through it. That's their goal. They're trying to get from here to somewhere on the other side.
West.
Maybe, from Wisconsin, you're going to maybe go Omaha, Lincoln. And from Colorado, you're going to go to Lake McConaughey.
Yeah.
Right? So lots of research went into that. I will say, unlike a lot of destinations, when you don't have a lot to lose, you're willing to take more risk, right? If you're last, and let me be clear, tourism is the third largest economic driver for that state. It's not that they don't know that. Ag is one, obviously. But they're well aware of the economic engine of tourism. And it has been third for a long time. And they just wanted to try to open up that potential to see what was there. So they were willing to take some risk. I'll hand it to the director of tourism, John Ricks. If you know him personally, he's a risk taker. He's willing to buck the status quo. And his governor, though, Ricketts is a very conservative dude. He came from the financial industry. He likes data. He was willing to, based on the data and the research that we had, take that risk. It paid off for them in spades.
Hey, Jennifer, I just wanted to make a couple comments on that one. Kurt sent me the website a couple months ago, and it's brilliant. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. Not only is it creative, but it's strategically spot on. Because when I look at just our office and our employees, they're not going to the standard places this year. You're hearing about people saying we're going off the path and we're trying something different, getting back to the isolate. And it's just like you are so ahead of it with that whole idea of We know you're not going to go to your normal busy spot, so why not try Nebraska? May not be for you, and we're cool with that. But I just loved it because it was creative, yes, very clever, but it was spot on, and a lot of vision to it, because I just think that's the way things are going now. It's like, I'm going to go to the Smoky Mountains, and I'm going to go, out to these new places and try to discover new things. So it was brilliant.
I thank you, Brian. I have to say, nobody imagined COVID was coming, and we didn't when we created that campaign.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, that's built on simplicity and obviously honesty.
Absolutely.
And authenticity. As things have turned out, if there was anything that was going to play in their favor, it has.
Hey, Jennifer, cool. Let's hang on that for a moment, because one of the things that we do at Acedia is we build websites. We've done a lot of work for Wisconsin tourism, and websites in a lot of spaces now are dramatically changing, or should be. People should look at this differently. What about websites for tourism organizations? How do those need to evolve? What would you suggest for for any organization? How do they need to reimagine that experience online?
Websites are tough in many respects. They have to serve a lot of masters.
Right.
There has to be this high level, emotional, heart sort of centered appeal, which is what travel is, right? It's why we all travel. There's a beautiful cultural learning perspective experience that travel renders, whether that's overseas or Wisconsin tourism. And then you got to provide all kinds of drill down specific, like mapping, is this close to that? And, what reviews does that restaurant get? And so a website is a really tough marketing channel, I think, for tourism. I will say, sticking on the Nebraska example, I'm going to step back just a little bit. Not true of all destinations, but many destinations have gone with the model of multiple agencies, right? You've got a brand agency, you've got a media agency, you've got a social agency, you've got a web agency, you've got a visitor guide agency, right? Because it's sort of that best of breed model. And that can work with an immense amount of coordination and collaboration and pretty steady hand on the rudder from the client side.
Sure.
We've all worked on agencies, and while we can play nice with others, that's not necessarily our inherent forte. Nebraska basically said, listen, we're going to go with this. They used a separate strategy agency that I was part of. Then they have a creative agency. They had a separate, creative executional campaign group. They've got the visitor guide and they got the website. And we had a meeting in the beginning when we rolled out that strategy. All of those players were in the room, and we explained the strategy, where it came from, why it was important, and then listed, here's a bunch of things we think needs to be changed. In order for you to have that sort of cheeky, in-your-face, disruptive message, honestly, it's not for everyone. That had better be carried through all the way. So now when you go to their website, it's not just a visual aesthetic reskin. That voice is carried through.
Yeah.
That voice is also carried through in their visitor guide, and that's a big difference, because that's usually done sort of from a publishing perspective.
Right.
So that would be what I would say, more than content or architecture, web architecture organization, it's carrying the essence and the voice of the brand and the value, if you have done value-based positioning, through.
The one part that may be different right now, and people may go to websites and to explore, and sites haven't had to do this before, carry this kind of water, is right now, if I'm going to a place, I don't know what the hell is open. Right. I don't know outside of like national parks, and even within national parks, I don't know what's there. So there seems to be that need for sites now to do more of that explaining and educating in terms of,
No question.
come downtown, we've blocked this off, go to these parks during these times.
Yeah.
This is not open anymore. Do not come here, type of thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Pat. That's the very parallel example to what we were talking about with the airlines and the hotels having to be very upfront about cleaning. That's the website's job in terms of destinations. What's open?
Gotcha.
And what's open and what requirements come from the traveler. Do you have to wear a mask? You'd think that would, my personal opinion, you think that would be sort of common knowledge, but it's not. And there's such variability in municipality and county and state mandates, and people don't know. Right.
Jennifer, a quick question I have for you. You had mentioned earlier, what a great opportunity, what a great time to try. We might have to do some trial and error. We might want to test. We might want to just sample some things. This is traditionally, as we all know, this is the time of year when we're planning. We're planning with for the next year with our clients, and I think there's always that want to have that game plan that gets put in place, and it's almost like, here's the plan, and we are tunnel vision, and nothing's going to change. Whereas, when I hear you talk and share some of these examples and you think through, it's sometimes the plan is be ready for some audibles, be ready for some trial and error. I mean, we're going to have a roadmap. We have to know where we want to go, but Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, that might mean that we're going to get off the highway a few times potentially and maybe go down a scenic route. And I think that's, as I think through our clients at Celtic and Acedi on a local level, those are things that I think, we might have to be cognizant about when we're sitting down this time of year. It's like, it might just be a different type of planning experience. I don't know.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What could possibly change?
I don't know, Pat. I don't know.
Kurt, I think that's a really important point relative to just humanity. Human beings in particular, what I know about North Americans is we do not like uncertainty. Uncertainty's been around us all the time. We've maybe convinced ourselves that we had control over things that we didn't, and the world previously looked a little bit more like it was in our control, but now we've come face to face with, if there's anything that's certain, it's going to be change. And so there's a couple different reactions, and I'm sure you've seen this in your friends and your colleagues just related to COVID, and we've all sort of done this, right? One day we're okay, and the next day we're stressed out about it.
Yeah.
Uncertainty, you can either try to clamp down and do what you always did and have a plan and have a discipline, and that does make you feel good. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have a plan of sorts. You should. The opportunity that comes with, as you said, get off the highway and go the scenic route is, it stretches, right? It means you have an opportunity for more creative thinking. And I don't just mean creative in the advertising sense, but creative problem solving, reimagining, re-engineering experiences, thinking through different ways of saying the same thing with a different context. To me as a marketer, once you get past the anxiety of, oh my God, I can't do what I always used to do, then there's an opportunity there. And I think some of the winners are going to be the ones that embrace it and try, and we read this in Fast Company all the time, fail fast, fail forward and try again. Ooh, but that gives us, anxiety to try, but those are going to be the ones that learn a little bit faster, adapt to a little bit greater degree, and probably have a greater upside potential coming out of whatever we're coming out of, however long that takes.
It's funny you bring that up, because I've seen both extremes with clients where there's some that are risk averse and they're like, well, we're kind of in shutdown mode and we can't do the things we normally do, so let's just sit tight, And then there are the others where it's the pioneers that are just like, hey, this creates opportunity. Let's try some things and not be afraid to fail. So I love that theme. Use your imagination. Don't be afraid to fail. And I read an article recently, and it's Disney, so obviously a mega brand, but they were kind of piling on the Disney rep about, hey, massive crowds, no social distancing, this is really going to kill you guys. This is really going to hurt you. No, 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 no. He's like, just like we are Imagineers for all of our movies and theme parks, we're reimagining the Disney experience, how we screen people, how we trace people, how we create smaller groups. And it felt empowering to me. Versus this, we're just going to have to take our lumps. It's like, well, do you? I mean, have you sat down as a team and just said, clean slate, let's try it. Let's go quarter to quarter, month to month versus looking at a year out,
If circling back to something earlier, and we sort of said, if you believe USTA and, all the other pundits, they're basically giving us 3 years. Okay, well, that gives us some time to have discipline. Like, we shouldn't be throwing spaghetti against the wall either.
Yeah.
We should have some discipline, some best practices, some, by the way, we can learn from other tourism brands, and some we can learn from other industries, by the way. Tourism tends not to do this, but there's a lot of learning going on from some other technology is one of them, obviously, which we're all using right now. From tourism, how can we make the experience that we once promoted for as many people as we could, mass, to intimate? How can you make it intimate? How can you make it personal? How can you make it deeper rather than just wider? I bet you there's all kinds of things within a museum experience or, a dining experience that have been under the surface and have been there sort of waiting for us to uncover their potential. And now is a great time to give it a try and see.
So Jennifer and team here, as we kind of bring this to a close, and this has been outstanding. I want to go back to that 3 to 4 year kind of stat that came up earlier and keeps coming up. First of all, let me ask you this, guys, everybody here. Do you believe that? I mean, it's 3 years. You could say one thing about the tourism industry. They always seem to be a little bit overly optimistic about things. 3 years seems pushing that. But I want to hear from the team. What does everybody think?
From what I've been seeing, and I've been hearing the same thing, it's going to take 2 to 3 year recovery. I think that's probably true, but I think the recovery is going to happen, and I think we're currently in that
Agreed.
right now. That's the big thing is, it's going to take time to get there, but at least we're not, in the quicksand, we're with no momentum. I'm feeling just from the clients we're talking with, and even next year, they are, we need to invest. We need to be out there. We need to be trying things. So maybe 2 to 3 years, but it's not going to be like, holy cow, like this year. I think we're going to see some steady improvement month to month, year to year. Just my perspective.
Yeah, I don't, Pat, it's a good question. And to be truthful, I don't know. I wish I did, because it gets back to what you were saying earlier, Jennifer. It's like, we want to know. I want to know. It's like, I don't like this uncertainty. I hope it's not. But it seems like a reasonable number based on, look at how, if you look at 2020, the year went by so fast, and it just, the extremes were unbelievable. So it seems to me that could be a realistic stretch. But what I've also learned too is just as quickly as things have happened behind us, they can happen just as quickly ahead of us. I'm amazed that, and we joke, it's like the things that we knew or we thought we knew in March, or we were responding to, or we thought were the most terrible things. It's amazing now, fast forward months later, where we're at now. I hope we're having a conversation a year from now. We're saying, can you imagine? Who would have thought 9 months, 12 months from now, how quickly things change and how behaviors have changed. And there's just, again, there's a lot of uncertainty. We'll see. Not really an answer, but my perspective.
Pat, what say you?
Boy, like anything, guys, it's going to be, it will come back. And I think just there'll be certain sectors that really will lag. You know, one big one is cruise. I mean, they're huge. What I think will happen is it'll come back because they'll just lower their price enough where people will go, hell, for $99, I could get around the Caribbean. I'm going to go, type of thing. So I think they'll come back. I think it'll take a while. River cruising, I could see that coming back faster. RVs, I think, Jennifer, you were talking about that in a previous conversation. I mean, isn't that business like through the roof? I don't see that
it's up
slowing.
400%.
Up 400%.
Yeah.
In sales and in rentals.
Right. I that's going to be big for a while. I think, like some of maybe the attraction pieces may, I don't know. Do you guys think? I think that might be a little bit on the lagging side of things, but maybe I'm wrong.
One of the things we talked about earlier was the subsets. Jennifer, you had mentioned, when you think of travel destinations, start thinking about, fuel, gas, whatever it might be. And, it will be case by case. It's hard to put everyone into one bucket. And again, you're right with RVs, that 400%, that's crazy. We talked earlier about how driving destinations, vacations have changed, the types of vacation experience. And again, Brian, you mentioned earlier, if you look at the outdoors, I mean, I was reading articles yesterday, it's through the roof, outdoor recreation, because people are getting outside. So then you start to think, well, what industries trickle down from, a national park or a national scenic trail in that case? Well, I mean, how does that impact clothing, apparel, footwear? Yeah. So we'll see.
And I would be remiss, since we're having a pint here, not to say that, I don't know if this is a good trend or not, but from an economic standpoint, alcohol consumption is up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And Pat would know that.
Yes, I do.
It is.
I agree with Pat, and Adam Sachs from Tourism Economics has gone on the soapbox, as he should, about there will be a recovery. This is not the first time that tourism has taken it in the backside. I'll just put it that way, right? We've had SARS. We've had 9/11, we've had all kinds of different setbacks. Obviously this one's a little bit different, but because it has not only health implications, it's got some economic factors to it as well. It's worldwide. It's not just in a specific geographic area. But, for North Americans, a lot of Europeans, Australians, travel is considered not just a privilege, right? We like to think about it as an inherent right. Americans, we like our freedom to move about, to try and experience new things, to see new places. The longer COVID hangs around, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere away tomorrow, the more pent up that desire to experience travel and see new places is going to be. So however fast or slow that recovery is, I can't see any other outcome other than a recovery. Right. It will happen. It might come at a different speed, at different levels, depending if you're a cruise ship or an airline or a hotel or Airbnb. But I only see the upside from a consumer desire and behavior standpoint at some point, whether that's related to national mask mandates or vaccines or whatever it is. I can imagine, just like this year, there's going to be some of these. We want to see a steady ramp up to recovery, and I suspect there's going to be a few more rapids in the river, and we're just going to have to decide if that's a fun ride or if that's, a nail biter.
Yeah.
Jennifer Simmons, thank you so much for your time, guys. I told you this was going to be amazing. We can easily go on. Jennifer, tell people how they could find you, how they get in touch with you, how do they connect with you? take it?
I am on LinkedIn, so you can definitely find me there. Jennifer Simmons, my company's name is Marketexture Inc. I've been leading that consulting firm for a little over 20 years now. My email is jsimmons, JSIMMONS @marketexture.com, MARKETEXTURE.
Yeah.
We'll put all those in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put those in the notes. But Jennifer, just an amazing conversation. I can't tell you how much I've learned just from the few times we've talked. And you're brilliant. And I want you on our strategy team. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would love to have you guiding them. So we'll make sure to put your contact information down. And thanks for your time today.
Absolutely. I echo your comments, Brian. It was a pleasure. This conversation was awesome. Learned a lot. It was just, I do feel like we could keep going. I wish we could. But I thank you sincerely just for sharing some time with us and our audience. And thank you again.
Well, thanks guys for having me. I appreciate it. And if it were later in the day, I'd change my drink.
Come back to the podcast anytime, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you for listening. Hit the subscribe button. Leave us any comments. Have a great day. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.